All right, so Stafford is understandably excited. RC is not. Ryan Clark on Twitter yesterday simply posted, "I hate it." And so RC, who is very seldom coy on Twitter, needs to explain that tweet. Ryan Clark, why do you hate it?
Because my priorities for Odell are obviously different from Odell's priorities. My priorities for him was to get to a spot where he could show he could still be a top 10, 15 wide receiver in this league, show he still had that type of juice, that type of separation, that type of difference-making ability. Obviously, those weren't his priorities. Obviously, that wasn't at the top of his list. You're going to go to a team where one guy in Cooper Kupp gets over 32% of the targets for a football team, and then there's a Robert Woods and a Van Jefferson, there's a Tyler Higbee, right? There's also the running game, which Sean McVay likes to focus on in order to get into the play-action pass game. And you just said that Matthew Stafford was excited. Matthew Stafford wasn't excited. Matthew Stafford sounded like a quarterback that didn't really play well last week, that has a ton of wide receivers in the wide receiver room that are highly capable, and they've just added a new receiver. That's not the feeling that, we wouldn't be talking about Odell Beckham Jr. after having the type of career or having the type of stretch run he had in Cleveland if he wasn't Odell Beckham Jr., if we weren't excited about it. We're talking about a dude that had 3-point-something yards a game, for 3-point-something catches a game, 53 yards, and 7 touchdowns his entire time in Cleveland. You know why we were on Odell Beckham watch? Because we're excited, Greeny. Matthew Stafford was not excited. Matthew Stafford sounded like a dude who already had a guy who was in the conversation with only Jerry Rice, and then he had another guy that he trusted in Woods, and then he had another guy, Van Jefferson, who's coming along, and they just added another receiver. That's why I would have liked the New England Patriots. That's why I would have liked Kansas City, the Packers, somewhere that needed Odell, where he would have been celebrated. Now, in L.A., you can come, you can show that you can get along, but it ain't the priorities that RC had for him. RC wanted him to be able to show y'all that he could still do it at the highest level.
I think it's a really good point. And so let me turn to you, Dan. How did it wind up this way? Because I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were head-scratching yesterday. How did it wind up with OBJ in L.A.?
First of all, they needed a wide receiver, right? I mean, Deshaun Jackson didn't get it done. They let him go. They put a couple guys on IR. They're thin at the position. So here comes a guy onto the market that Sean McVay has liked for a long time, that has some mutual respect between him and the player. They tried to get him the last time he was available, didn't. He ended up in Cleveland. So then they sort of put their full court press on. They had players recruit him. And when you talk about Rams players recruiting you, you're talking about guys like Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and now Von Miller. You know, the star power appeals. L.A. appeals to Odell Beckham. He already spends a lot of time out there. And in terms of, RC's priorities for him, yeah, absolutely. He could have gone somewhere else and been the guy. But I know for a fact part of the Rams sales pitch was, look, come here, be a part of a winner. We're ready to win a Super Bowl right now. Be a contributing part of our wide receiver room. That there might help rehab your, reputation and image as much as performance would.
It's interesting to me because they needed bodies at the position. It's essentially what you're saying. But Odell Beckham comes with a lot more than just that.
And the Rams, as we've seen under Sean McVay, are about how can we elevate the ceiling as much as possible. So not only a body, but here's a guy that can make us even more exceptional.
Yeah, you used a phrase in your notes. I won't steal it from that. I really liked when you described the situation.
Yeah, when I saw this move happen, I said this is the law of diminishing returns, right? And what that means is you add an increased input factor, and it doesn't actually add so much value when the output comes. And I look at a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., and I say, okay, the value that he brings as a star wide receiver should go to a team that needs a star wide receiver. Whereas you go to the LA Rams, you already have Cooper Kupp, who leads the NFL in receptions, in receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns, and also the litany of names who we already listed, Van Jefferson, Robert Woods, etc. And so even though you're getting Odell Beckham Jr., you're not going to get the full value of Odell Beckham Jr. because this offense won't have enough space to fit Odell Beckham Jr. and all of his greatness.
I think that gets to a really interesting point about roster construction in the NFL right now, because we always look at, who needs what? And the Buccaneers didn't need Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette last year. They had plenty, but they add them because they feel like they can get great isn't great enough, right? You have to make sure, and you get to a point where you're a Super Bowl champion. I think the Rams are approaching it a little like that.
Let me get Nico in here, and then RC will come back. Go ahead, Nico.
Yeah, I'm going third person like RC. Nico's scratching his head. You know, when I'm thinking about this OBJ situation, Nico figured he would go to the Patriots, who would say, "You're number one. Come here, and you're going to touch the ball 10, 15 times a game." Now he goes to the Rams, and how many times is he going to touch the ball? We don't know. They got Cooper Kupp. They got a guy, a head coach that probably wants to feed him the football to beat all the records for all-time season receiver, wide receiver. So, you know, everyone's talking about the Monstars. The last time Nico saw Space Jam, guess what? The Monstars got beat. Now, they got beat. So it doesn't matter what you have. You can have as many receivers as you want. It comes down to chemistry. The Rams have the chemistry, and I don't think OBJ walks into that building and breaks up the chemistry between the quarterback and the receiver.
We will have a lot more time for this story as the morning goes on. But, RC, put a ribbon on it for now.
Just as interesting what Dan said about AB, right? AB goes to a team where the quarterback loved him so much he was going to let him live in the house, where Bruce Arians had a previous relationship with Antonio Brown, and on a team where the quarterback felt like, if you're going to double Evans, if you're going to double Godwin, I'll give Antonio Brown 10 targets a game. We've seen that. I don't necessarily know if Odell Beckham Jr. gets to that point, and if he doesn't, he never gets a chance to show people that he can still do what he does at the top level in this game.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.